this is something I've actually never really talked about, but which is surprising because this is actually a very important thing, especially if you want to make more money driving for Uber, Lyft, or any other ride-sharing platform, and that is this. And the question, and this is basically answering the question that I got, which is, can you commute to a big city and drive for them? Basically drive for Lyft and Uber in a bigger city. Now, not only can you, but you also should. And here's what I mean. I don't think I've ever talked about this little fun fact, but the person who actually got me interested in becoming a driver for Lyft and Uber is actually my cousin. He lives roughly about a half an hour outside of Boston, and obviously I started driving for Lyft and Uber in Boston. And he's an entrepreneur, and he said, hey, Mark, your schedule is kind of similar to an entrepreneur's. Obviously you're doing this whole DJ thing. You should drive for Lyft and Uber. It's a great way to make extra side cash. And what he told me is that essentially what he would do is he would commute, if you think of it from that perspective, a half an hour, from where he lives into the city. He'd drive on every Friday and Saturday night. I think his hours a day was from 7 to 3, I think was his kind of time. So that kind of 8 hours. And do that on Friday and Saturday night and then drive all the way home. And I asked him, I was like, well, that makes sense you're driving all the way in, but especially with traffic, with the way Boston traffic can be, sometimes it can be 45 minutes, sometimes even an hour, actually, if 93 is really bad, to get into Boston. And he said to me, he's like, well, it's worth it. It's worth it to commute those crazy hours because driving in my city, I'm not going to make even close to the amount that I would driving in Boston. So basically, to answer your question, obviously this is going to be a little bit of a brief video, but I got asked, this question basically, can you commute? And I've gotten this a couple times in the past too. Can you commute to a big city and drive for Lyft and Uber there? The answer is 100% yes. And not only you can, but you should. Because you can make way more money, even if it's like an hour commute to get to that big city. I promise you, I'm sweating a little bit. It's a little bit hot in here, obviously, just bouncing around today in LA. Anyway, but basically, even if it takes you, say, an hour, say you're an hour outside of a major city, whether it's Chicago or LA or Miami or whatever, it's worth that hour commute because you're going to make significantly more. And this kind of goes into looking at job selection and jobs in general. This can get a little more technical, but analytically, you can either say, oh, I'm going to commute 5 minutes to a small city or a small town and make X amount per hour, or I can commute an hour to a big city, and yeah, maybe you'll lose 2 hours, an hour there, an hour back, but if you factor in everything, you're probably going to have a way higher hourly rate in terms of how much you're going to make as opposed to just driving in a small city. So basically, yes, you can. The only exception, and this is very, very different on your situation and everything, the only exception I will say is, let's say you're on the border. Let's say you are, I'm trying to think a city that's on a border of something. I don't know. Let's say you're an hour from Chicago, but you live in Ohio or something. I don't know. Like say you're basically an hour from a city, but that major city is actually in a different state. There may be technicalities, and obviously that's something you may have to look into with Lyft and Uber. I guarantee they probably dealt with that issue before, where let's say you're like, you know what, I live on the border of a state. It's way more lucrative for me to drive in that state and drive for them, but obviously my license plate is not for that state or the state I live in. So I would check with Lyft and Uber about that. That's the only exception to this rule that I'm not 100% sure of, and I guarantee every case is different because there are different legal rules state to state. So some states, it may be okay for you to go there and drive with, your state license plate. Other states may be illegal. So that really depends.